You're listening to DecayMag Sessions. Crossbreed.
Welcome to Sector 9, OTU Space Station.
Gene splicing. Using alien DNA to benefit ours. You're about to do more for modern science on Earth than anyone has ever done in the last 500 years.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. This is Ken R2's DecayMag founder and the host for this podcast. Joining me as co-host for this episode is
Stacy Cox, staff correspondent with DecayMag.com. Be sure to stop by our Patreon page at patreon.com/DecayMag. Your donations will help us bring future episodes. As a Patreon, you'll receive bonus content as well as free and discounted on upcoming DecayMag merchandise.
And you are listening to DecayMag Sessions episode 21. And DecayMag Sessions is not unlike our regular weekly podcast sessions. We take one film, talk about that one particular film, and host a slate of interviews from that one particular film. And in this case, we will be discussing the upcoming sci-fi action thriller Crossbreed. And on our slate of interviews, we have the writer, director, Brandon Slagle. We also have actress Devanny Pinn, portrays the Crossbreed in this movie, and also actor Stink Fisher. He portrays the role of Adam Boss Riker. And we have 4 topics that would relate to this upcoming film. Stacy, before we jump into the film, you've seen the film. Just briefly before we jump into it, initial thoughts.
Well, I'd say the concept was interesting. The execution, however, is a completely different story.
You know what really got me for the first impressions is this film also stars Daniel Baldwin and Vivica A. Fox. And for an indie film, I found that rather surprising. We see big names attached to indie films, but in this case, we have 2 big names attached to this film.
Yeah. Yes, Hollywood names actually, and also don't forget Vernon Wells as well. Yes, I was very surprised at the mediocrity of this film. With those big names, you know, you see big names like that, and you go, "Oh, this is gonna be good." You know, at least the acting is gonna be good. But oh my, mediocre.
Ouch. Well, let's get started because I know we got a lot to say on our initial movie review overview. But you could catch the full review of Crossbreed at DecayMag.com, and also podcast notes accompanying this episode. Without further ado, let's begin our episode.
Crossbreed first impressions.
The Sharak-T are coming for it.
Does this mean war? Madam President, does this mean war?
Spacecraft UCT monitor carrying an alien life form was commandeered by mercenaries. We believe they're going to use it as a platform to launch chemical weapons against the United States.
We need someone who can do the job, and Riker is the best candidate.
Welcome to Sci-Fi 5. Medical research level.
So, kicking off our first topic is Crossbreed impressions, and this is basically an overview, thoughts on the film, and of course our full review for Crossbreed will be on DecayMag.com. let's begin with the special effects. I thought that the special effects, they were divided, I would say 80-20. Of course, 20% was kind of, okay, it could be done much, much, much better. But 80%, I found it to be rather nice. The spaceships, the space station. I wasn't too happy with the lasers going pew, pew, pew. No. That looked kind of cheesy. But I was really intrigued with the spaceship and the space station. I think those were really, really nice working models. You could tell, oh, okay, it's in space and something like that, and futuristic. But there were the other things, like, for example, when the soldiers were shooting at each other, and you would see the bullets hitting the wall, and there's no bullet holes. So I'm like, wait a second. Can you at least put some digital bullet holes on the wall? Anyway. So, Stacy, what are your thoughts on the special effects?
I actually agree with everything you just said. And the one thing that really grinded my gears was the pew, pew, pew. I was like, what the heck? I'm like, no, that did not just happen. Just like, of course, as we mentioned before, team sits in there. Hollywood names, at least for a couple of them, you would think much more investment in the practical and special effects would be made.
Right.
You know, so.
Right, yeah. I mean, we could go down the list of the 20%, the bad ones. The pew pew really, I have to agree with you. It grinded my gears. Oh gosh, that was terrible.
Honestly, when I heard that, I was like, that did not just happen. Like, no.
Yes.
I could not.
I mean,
I couldn't even deal with that. I said, no,
exactly. Well, and when I was watching the film and I saw the pew pew, laser shooting, we just saying pew pew because that's what it sounded like. The first thing that came to my head was Star Wars, the first Star Wars. I'm saying, wait a second. If we were to look at Star Wars now, we would say those graphics are cheesy because they're doing the same thing. But okay, I'll take it for what it is. But I have to emphasize, I did enjoy the space station and the spaceship. They look really good, and the background of space looked impressive as well. So I gotta give credit where credit. Of course, not everything's perfect when you make an indie film, but you have to give credit to where it's due. And I think they looked nice.
I'm sorry. I'm also to touch on what you said about Star Wars. And I have never seen Star Wars yet. But if I'm not mistaken, wait a minute, what year was the first Star Wars released?
Oh man, I'm going to get attacked from all angles because I would have to say 80s, early 80s.
Well, it's saying I was doing a search on IMDb, and for some reason it just came with the video game saying in 87. So I'm assuming the movie was released before the video game?
Yes. It was way before the video game. Yeah.
Yes. So, when you think about that, when you mentioned, back to Star Wars and everything, when you think about that, back in those days, in almost 2020, that pew-pew, a crossbreed, there's no excuse.
Oh, yeah, I see your point, definitely. Yeah. And there's so much software out there that is easily accessible. Well, not easily accessible, but you have to pay a pretty penny for them. But as a independent films house, you should be able to afford it and not have the pew pew. I think that's what you're going for in your explanation. Right?
Yeah, I'm like, it's almost 2020 now. There ain't no excuse for that right about now. I mean, there is an excuse, but it's not.
Right.
Not the excuse that acceptable, I should say.
Right.
That's not an acceptable excuse for that in 2020.
Well, let's from special effects. Let's jump into the practical effects. I think the practical effects were great, were fantastic. The creature, the crossbreed creature, even though you only see the creature in dark light conditions, I think that worked out well. And they didn't use CGI. I think this film would have been a disaster if the creature would have been entirely CGI. And you could tell that the creature was practical effects touched up with CGI. I think that was a great move there.
I agree with you on that as well. I absolutely love the practical effects, the whole design of the creature. That probably was one of my favorite parts of the movie. Was the creature? Actually, was the practical effects in general. The costumes. It was so futuristic and original.
Right.
I felt that part of the film was original. So, and kudos to not using CGI, because honestly, CGI for this film would not have made any sense. It would be like, what the heck?
Yeah, it would have been a disaster.
So I'm glad they stuck to practical effects.
Right. And I don't know if you ever noticed, Stacy, but in order to deliver a good alien creature, the payoff, it has to be presented at the right time in the movie. And I think when they presented the creature fully, that was the perfect time, because that was when all the shit hit the fan. Everybody's trying to kill this thing or survive. That was a perfect time. They didn't show it at the beginning. They didn't show it at the middle. They showed it closer to the end, so that way it could bring out more action. I think that was a good move too.
I do as well. And usually I'm one of my pet peeves is when you're watching a film and for more than half the film you're just seeing all this like random stuff going on, and you're like, okay, get to the point. And then the last 10 minutes of the film, they finally get to the point to what's going on. In this case, I am glad it played out the way it did.
Right. And one thing I would have like to see is we see a good payoff, we see good practical effects, but the poster art, you're already showing what the creature looks like. That is a risky move. Audiences would look at the poster and they'll say, what the hell is this? They may not like the creature and they won't watch the movie. They could have put something else on the poster. I think the spaceship with the floating heads would have been enough. Not with the creature in the middle. That just gives too much away.
Yeah. I agree, because I just, in any case, any movie coming out, when they put the main antagonist in the poster, especially if it's a creature, it's pretty much like you're giving it away.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, okay, we see what it is right now, so why do we even need to watch the film anymore when we see what it is? We see what they're fighting. We see what the antagonist is right here.
Right.
There's no point in even watching the film anymore, because the whole point of watching films like this is to find out. It's that whole, building anticipation to that final scene, Matt. That's
right.
A lot of times that's what these films for. That's why we sit for 30, 40 minutes to finally figure out what the heck it is.
Right. Absolutely.
So on the cover like that, you're just like, well, I know what it is now. No need to watch the film anymore, because it takes all of the mystery.
Right. It does. It takes all of the mystery away from it. And let's jump on into, before the time runs out for this segment, let's delve on two important aspects for the film. Let's go into performances. I think the performances were, of course, a percentage. I think, let's say 70-30. There was the 70% of the film. You're laughing already? Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry.
Well, 70% of the performances were good, but let's begin with the 30% of the film, the bad part. Watching some of the film, especially the way the soldiers are, the way they interact, the uniform, everything about them. I was saying to myself, okay, wait a second. I know you're trying to add comedic element to the story so that it breaks up all the seriousness. Of course, I get that. But they're supposed to be trained soldiers. I'm thinking trained soldiers. I'm thinking Predator. Hard, rough guys that gas. Yeah, I didn't see that in none of them and the way they carried themselves. With exception for the captain. I think the captain really carried himself as a true soldier, given how the film is coming across. The 70%, I would say, would go to, let's say, Vivica A. Fox, Daniel Baldwin. Of course, I mentioned Sting Fisher. Of course, the antagonist, the Crossbreed, she did a good role as the creature. But there were those 30%, Stacy, and I know that's why you're laughing. Oh gosh.
Oh man. And I agree with you as well, because Vivica A. Fox and Daniel Baldwin, they're veterans, you know. So honestly, I kind of feel like this film is a downplay, given their status.
Okay.
I should say, given their status, their veteran status in cinema. But I definitely agree with you. Vivica A. Fox, Daniel Baldwin was good. The rest of them just like, what the heck is going on here? Like, the acting was so enough, and I could not with this acting. It just I don't even know. Like, I know what kind of films like can compare here. Of course, they were awesome. Again, they are veteran cinema, so it's to be expected. But yeah, this and honestly, are we allowed to talk about the budget here? Because on IMDb, this says $3,500,000. Okay.
No.
$3,500,000. Exactly where did this money go to? Because it wasn't the acting. Did Vivica Fox and Daniel Baldwin, did they get most of that money?
Apparently, yeah. I believe so.
It was seemed so, because honestly, at first I thought I read 3,500, but I'm like, oh no, that's another 3 zeros right there. Yeah, it didn't go to the special effects really. A lot of it must have went to Vivica A. Fox and Daniel Baldwin.
Oh wow! No, well, to close out the performance, and then we jump it onto our final topic here to close out this segment. One part of the film really, I wanted to pull my hair out. Of course, I gave it 70. What was it? 70-40? 70-40. Yeah, that was the acting.
70-30.
70-30. 70-30.
Yeah.
70 was good. 30 was atrocious. Okay, we get that. Nothing's perfect. But one scene in particular, I wanted to throw something at the screen, and that was the part when the soldiers are getting shot by, as soon as they arrive at the space station, they're getting shot at by the scientists. So they have one guy, he has a gun, and the soldier asks him, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm a physicist." and the soldier walks up to him, and the guy says, "I study the alien creature." And I say, wait. I paused it. I said, wait a second. I may not be that much into science, but a physicist does not study biology. That's a biologist. Right. So I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Wait, you know what they call that? A plot hole. Wait, is it a plot hole?
No, that was bad. That was like, wait. You're a biologist. A physicist studies space and quantum physics and shit like that. He doesn't study where the organs are. So I'm going to close it with that. Originality and redefining, final thoughts to close out the segment. How original and how redefining you think Crossbreed is?
I'd say as far as the concept itself goes, it is, I said, yeah, as far as the concept goes, it's creative. I'm going to say it's creative. I'm not going to say it's original or redefining, but it is creative.
Right.
I will say that much.
Right. I agree. It takes a lot of creativity to put your ideas out there, especially when it has a lot to do with sci-fi. Even if it's pew pew laser shooting, hey, you got to give credit. Somebody took the time to make the film. You got to give credit for that. It's creative.
Yes.
Originality and redefining, I don't think so, because there are so many other films that is already, they've done this before. I would like to see something different, but of course, does that really what the audiences want? Do they want something different, or they want to see the same thing again and say, oh wow, cool, this reminds me of Predator, or this reminds me of Alien? So we just don't know how, because a film is a product, so you don't know how the product is going to sell if it be different.
Crossbreed Roundtable interview. Featuring director, writer Brandon Slagle, actress, producer Devanny Pinn, and actor Stink Fisher.
Ken R2's here. Earlier this year, 2019, back in January, I had the pleasure to interview the co-writer and director for Crossbreed, Mr. Brandon Slagle, the producer / actress, and of course, the villainous alien in Crossbreed, Miss Devanny Pinn, and the hero, the kick-ass soldier, portrayed by actor Stink Fisher. In this roundtable interview, we of course will be delving into the production of Crossbreed as well as independent filmmaking, and we have an origin story, a little glimpse on the background for the cast and crew behind Crossbreed. This is the first part of this roundtable interview. We would scatter the second and third part of the interview throughout this podcast. So without further ado, please, it is my pleasure to introduce my roundtable interview with Brandon Slagle, Devanny Pinn, and Stink Fisher. Thank you everyone, Mr. Brandon Slagle, Devanny Pinn, Stink Fisher, joining me on this interview, for your time, especially on a Friday. I know you guys are so busy wrapping up your projects, and Happy New Year.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Just a quick rundown, an introduction, if you will, an origin story, beginning with Mr. Slagle and Devanny, and then finalizing that part of the interview with Stink Fisher. What got you into your acting career, movie career, so on and so forth, starting with humble beginnings?
So my humble beginnings were my mom erroneously taking me to see Halloween when I was a small child in the theater at the request of my uncle. My mom didn't know, anything about the movie. And then it's kind of all I remember ever wanting to really do outside of being a SWAT team officer, which didn't happen. So I did theater my entire life. I majored in theater in college. I got a writing degree, and sort of without any guidance, just sort of had to find my own way, which, was tough at the time, but I kind of recommend. And I spent many years acting before realizing that I felt I could do better work behind the camera. And Devanny and I started producing films about 9 years ago now. And Crossbreed was, at the time, it's not about to be, but was the biggest project we had done to date. And one of the ones we're most proud of, too.
Very well put.
Yeah, I guess I sort of summed a lot of it up.
Yeah.
But I didn't. But I didn't go to college with an opera scholarship. So Devanny Pinn, everyone.
That's true. I did. I grew up in Jersey girl, and I was involved in musical theater in the community there, as well as ballet theater. I was involved with most of my life. I actually wanted to be a professional ballerina. I toured with both local productions in New Jersey as well as the Moscow Ballet when they came through to do U.S. tours. And halfway through my career, I broke my feet and had to try something else. So I moved back into musical theater and studied that through school. I moved out west the end of my high school career to get residency because I received an opera scholarship in Arizona. And so I pursued that for a little bit, but trying to get into the communities there, musical theater community, and I didn't find any productions, but I found independent film productions. And so I went there blindly just to try it out, and I ended up landing the lead in my first film audition, which was a horror movie. And that ended up doing really well overseas. And Lloyd Kaufman of Trauma kind of scooped me up and taught me about independent film production. And he was a really great mentor of mine, introduced me to a lot of really great people in our industry. And I ended up finding that I loved acting in horror movies. And then eventually filmmaking itself, I really enjoyed. And I got hired to act in a movie that Brandon was involved in years ago in New York. And we decided that we liked working together. And so we ended up, as he said, making all kinds of movies together and learning about the craft and growing. And it really formed a whole different kind of love. And so now I both pursue acting full time, and also we own a company together, Jaguar Motion Pictures, that has producing genre content and now action content. And Crossbreed is our latest. We found Stinkfisher in. We've been using a lot of the same kind of people over and over again that we really enjoyed working with over the years that I had found from films that I had acted in, as well as people that we had seen in the circuit and enjoyed. So we kind of stuck with the same little circle. And then the more recent productions that we had done, including Crossbreed, we really wanted to branch out and get some new talent. So when we were putting Crossbreed together, we had auditions and submissions both on the East Coast and the West Coast. And we were looking for our star, and we had over 1,000 people submit for the lead role opposite Vivica and Daniel. And aside from Stinkfisher's awesome name and face, we for some reason just kept coming back to him. He just felt like this really great star quality. We thought we found a gem, and it just so happens that we ended up being from the same area, New Jersey. I found out later too, and he came on board. We're going to let him talk about himself mostly, but he is incredibly well-rounded talent as well, and we're very proud to have him starring in our production.
And let me quickly say that when we saw him, it was sort of instinctual. Like, we just, before even hearing him read, and we were like, well, that's the guy. And it had nothing to do with his credits or anything. There was just something about him that really fit.
He has star quality, absolutely.
Well, I don't even know how I follow that up because I got to tell you that my love for Devanny and Brandon runs very deep, and for many reasons. Not only for the opportunity to be part of Jaguar Productions, and not because they trusted me to take Adam Riker to another level, but they are just the most genuine. The film industry in general is full of so many difficult people to deal with. A lot of wannabes, some phony people along the way, and I've been in it a long enough time to come across a lot of different folks, and I have never met two more genuine, caring individuals that just put their heart into everything they do and care about every single person that's on that set the way that they do. They are just two of the most fantastic people. And honestly, if I never worked with anyone else again and I just worked with them, I'd be the happiest dude in the world because they're the real deal. Aside from that, guys, I can't thank you enough for saying such really flattering and humbling things about me. With that being said, my humbling beginnings also were based in ballet. I wanted to be a ballet star as well, and unfortunately, I grew really fast and hit a really large amount of weight rather quickly, and that never happened. But I used to put my mom's ballet shoes on, which was really funny. And we had a landing in our going down to our basement, and it was really smooth. It was a really smooth surface. And I remember as a kid, I used to put the slippers on, and I would literally try to do ballet moves on this landing. And my mom caught me one day, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, just trying them out. It's all good." I was 25 at the time, so it was a little younger. But no, my humbling beginnings. I was a football player. I was always a team player. My dad was my high school coach. He was an amazing man. He passed away in 2001, unfortunately. But prior to that, my dad was a very celebrated local figure. He was iconic. He was a Renaissance man. He wore many hats, and some of those hats included a published author, a published playwright. He had several screenplays optioned over the course of years, and if Sierra Nevada Pictures didn't go bankrupt, I think that he would have at least had one film under his belt before he passed away. And he had plays published or produced up on off Broadway up in New York. And he was an actor. He had auditioned for Mel Brooks. My dad was just an amazing guy. And on top of that, he directed all of the musicals and plays at the local high school for about 17 or 18 years. So I grew up in the theater. I literally grew up in a theater. I ran around backstage, in the pit, in the box, you name it. I was all over the place. So I always had a love and an affinity for anything theatrical because my house was entirely theatrical all the time. And on top of that, it was layered with sports, and the dedication and the tenacity of football, layered into the commitment that it takes to be involved in theater or in film or in writing or anything of that nature. So I had a lot of layers kind of built into me as I was growing up. So I went to college, played football in college. I got signed by the New York Jets in 1994. I was 300 pounds, was a big dude. And I always had this feeling that I wanted to kind of do like the, who was it? Alex Karras. He was in, what was that wonderful movie where he's a big guy. He was a football player. He played for the Bears, and then he rolled into acting. And I always felt like that was going to be me. I was going to have this awesome football career, and then I would just roll into acting. And I got released from the Jets. I wound up playing arena ball, which is a smaller professional league. I played for a couple of years. Then I went up to Montreal, and I played in the CFL for the Montreal Alouettes. And after the season, they offered me a 2-year contract extension. And I came home, and I was mulling it over in South Jersey. And I was really not sure if I wanted to live in Montreal for the next 2 years. I was making basically, next to NFL money, I was making peanuts. And I was beating my body up. And I got a phone call from a friend of mine that was doing casting in Philadelphia for Mike Lemon Casting. They were looking for a football player for a commercial spot. And they just happened to find my number from a mutual friend, and said, "Hey, like, are you interested in doing commercial work? Like, would you want to do this?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I would love to do it." So I took the opportunity. I booked it on site. Like, I basically just walked in the office and they said, "You're great. You're hired." And from there, I started getting auditions for everything across the board. And I was in Philadelphia. I was based out of Philadelphia. So I was getting auditions for all these cool projects, non-union, union, what have you. And my friend that was in the casting agency kept coming back to me, and she was saying things to me like, "Stink, you are beating people out that are Shakespearean trained." She's like, "People are blown away by you. You are seriously, like, you got something. You've got to pursue this." So I kept, like, playing around with that in my head and thinking, like, you know what, maybe this is the time to do it. Maybe this is when I launch into this part of my life. And that's pretty much what I did. I took the jump. I took the jump and I said, I'm just going full tilt on this. I'm doing it full time. And I've been blessed enough and lucky enough to be able to do it from South Jersey, which is my roots. Like, my kids go to school here. My mom still lives here. Happily married here. So I'm very fortunate that I'm able to do it from South Jersey. But that's basically the way I began in the industry. Was just an opportunity came up. I had the background already just from growing up in it, and I seized it. And here we are.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you, everyone, for the origin story. And I see everyone's origin story in some way parallels one another, in the form that you had a dream, you knew what you wanted to do with that, and you just went for it. And that's great. That's very inspiring, especially for our listeners who are in the same predicament, who are trying to make something of their dreams and try to remove themselves from the 9-to-5 workday life. Nothing wrong with that. Got to pay the rent. But inevitably, we want to pursue our dreams. And everyone is from Jersey. Mr. Slagle, you were here in New York, and we're right here based in the Bronx, practically neighbors.
Oh, I haven't been in New York for 10 years, but I spent many years basically hitting the streets, doing everything I could as an actor before I came out here in, I guess 2008, which I can't believe was that long ago.
Looking over I just noticed this right now while glancing over IMDb. When you penned the script for Crossbreed, did you have any influences with other science fiction films? Case in point, we have Vivica Fox's character. Her surname is Henriksen. Then we have Weathers, Daniel Baldwin's character, and Riker. They all are based off of other sci-fi films. Lance Henriksen, Carl Weathers, Riker from Star Trek.
Actually, the Riker one, I think my co-writer in it may have actually put that in. It didn't click until just now. So kudos for noticing. Yeah, for the listeners, that would be, what's his name, Jonathan Frakes' character in Star Trek The Next Generation. I don't know how I know that because I'm not even really a Star Trek person, but I know it. Yeah, so this project, it has sort of existed in a few different iterations over the years. Like, at one point it was entirely set on an alien planet and had the title Nebulous. And then it became one thing, then another thing, then another thing. And we had just come off of a movie called Escape from Ensenada, which is kind of this action comedy quickie that we did ultimately to get the money for Crossbreed, because the investors were very happy with that production. So my co-writer on that project, Robert Thompson, and I decided to come up with basically the simplest story we could, but also the most clever story we could within those confines and within the rules of the world. And it ended up harking back to a lot of films that we know and love and grew up with, like Predator. I think basically the DNA of Crossbreed is very much rooted in Predator, as it's a group of, muscly guys who go into a situation under the pretense of one thing and find out that it's actually something else going on. But yeah, there's definitely, we definitely took the opportunity to interject, not in a way that was distracting, but a bit of nostalgia for people to to pick up. And what's funny is when we originally cast the movie and Vivica was announced as playing a President Henriksen, no one looked twice at the Lance Henriksen reference. And only recently have people started picking up on it. Same thing with Weathers, and actually the character Miller is based on Frank Miller, and so on and so forth. But it's basically, I guess the easier answer would be that it's kind of a love letter to movies like Predator and RoboCop and Aliens, and the movies that I grew up with that came out in that era, as well as canon films. Like, something else I've been saying is that this is basically a 1980s Chuck Norris movie in space.
Question for Devanny. Looking at your IMDb, you have a slate of credits. Most of them are in sci-fi and horror. And from your opinion, how has the advancements of women in horror have been, especially over the past, let's say, 15 years? We've seen a great slate of creatives and strong female roles.
I love to discuss this. I was very active in the movement. Right when I came onto the scene, there was a big shift in our particular state of the industry in our little corner there. Our market in independent horror had predominantly been straight to DVDs, straight to the video store market, and I entered the scene right when that transition was happening to VOD. And so things that had been kind of set in stone in the way we did things was all being shooken up. And a lot of people didn't know what to do or how to handle it, but it was all new to me. So I kind of jumped right in. And when VOD was happening, it kind of threw all rules and regulations out the window and said that we have a new opportunity to do things here. And one of the things that really came out of that I was thrilled about was the advancement of women in horror. And I knew from my very first film that that's what I love to do. With a theater background, I feel like genre pictures are the most theatrical. And so I really enjoyed doing them. And so I was involved with the independent horror scene, specifically women in horror, when it kind of came to inception there. Hannah Neurotica, who's a fantastic fellow lady in horror, came up with a manifesto through her father for Women in Horror Month and kind of united people from all over the world working in that. And before, there hadn't been a resource or a reason for all of us to kind of find each other. And so I had been involved in that inaugural year. I worked with several women in horror here in the States to organize blood drives along with the Safka's sisters up in Canada. And so I was really involved in like the roots of that first year of coming together and kind of being a big voice. And I didn't realize how powerful that was going to be, but it really gave kind of exposure and a voice to women all over the world who wanted to work in production, wanted to work in horror, and thought that it was kind of just a guy's game. And a lot of really amazing, talented voices in front of and behind the camera came from that. And so I learned a lot. I got a lot of assistance and a lot of education from that movement. And it really inspired what I loved almost more than anything was it inspired a lot of the men who were working in it to be aware of the talent that women can bring to the picture. And it started affecting the hiring process. It started affecting the viewpoints in scripts and in roles and in the audience and what you could see. And so a whole new round of opportunities came to be creative and in business. And I really kind of just jumped full force into that. And I got to meet some really great people and create some really awesome works of art. And now, since then, Brandon and I have evolved into at least at this point, successful business. And I'm very proud of that. And now I feel like there's enough momentum in that I can go back to stories that I really like to tell, which is not necessarily female fronted or not necessarily, targeted at women. I can just be a filmmaker. I don't even have to be a woman in horror or a female filmmaker anymore. I feel like that movement has empowered me to just tell the stories I want to tell in the way that I want to tell them. And that really came to a head at Crossbreed because I really like a lot of action stories and genre content that showcase strong guys just as much. And I love that, you know, we could have our team of characters played by incredibly talented male actors and written by males who understood both sides of it. Something I really loved about Brandon's work from the get-go was that he always wrote for strong women, and it wasn't going out of his way to do so. He just really saw women as powerful figures. In casting Vivica Fox, we really saw that as well because it was just common sense for us. And, you know, here we are at the release, and it's worldwide news and cinematically historic. And I just love that it was, you know, the right choice. Just like having Six was the right choice for this. And I hope that we get to continue to make bold choices and entertaining, fun cinema.
Interesting to me, if I may say real quick, is that even with the press push that's been coming recently, a lot of people have been overlooking this brawny Expendables in Space action movie was actually produced by a 5'2" woman, and I'd like to think that actually says something.
Right. And you mentioned Hannah, Devanny. I have spoken with her previously on her movement, and also a couple of years ago, the Women in Horror Film Festival, run by Vanessa Wright and Samantha Kolsnick, really expands the landscape for women on sci-fi, horror, and the thriller genres. It's a remarkable time we're living in now. Mr. Stink, and question for you. Going into this role in Crossbreed, the character is action-centric, and as Brandon has mentioned, it does pay homage to the action sci-fi films of yesteryear. What was it about this character when you read the script that really resonated with you, and how did you get into the role and make this guy such a kick-ass badassery?
Well, thank you for that. I immediately connected to Riker on many levels. Leader of teams, strong, physically strong, intelligent, can work his way through problems, either through force or by using his intellect. But the thing that I like the most about Riker is that he's flawed. He's not perfect. He's got issues. He's got a business up at the settlement on the moon that's not doing well, and he's going to lose the business. He's in hock, money wise. He is basically written himself off with Mother Earth and really wants nothing to do with any of that anymore. Just kind of wants to lead his life and live quietly, and that's obviously because of the situation he's in. He really doesn't have much of a choice if he wants to kind of continue on in that fashion. But through that, he almost, I don't want to say he doesn't pull his team together for the wrong reasons. He understands the urgency of the situation. He understands the severity of this situation, but at the same time, he's trying to save his own ass a little bit, and there's a bit of a flaw in there by doing that. And I like that because you see these characters drawn up all the time on paper, and they're just these perfect characters. And they just there's nothing wrong, and there's no layers. There's no layers to them. It's just and here I'm pulling these guys together, and we're going into a very hostile and dangerous situation. And my motivation isn't really to save the Earth or to get these guys work because I know they could all use the money. It's basically because I need to save my ass and I need to save my bar on the moon. And that's kind of like I could go either way. You can look at it like saying, hey, this guy, he's doing what he needs to do, and you can also look at it and be like, oh man, this guy's pulling guys into a situation for his own needs. So I really like that. And in preparation for that, I drew on my own life experiences with being a business owner and being in that crunch time where you really don't know where your next dollar's coming from, and you don't know if you're going to be able to keep the lights on, and the stress that comes with that, and the urgency and the desperation. And then on top of that, being a football player for as many years as I was fortunate to play, and being a captain of many of the teams that I played for, I was really able to draw on that sense of camaraderie and partnership and brotherhood, and pull all that together in a nice little bundle, and still have some, little swipes of humor in there, and sarcasm, and yet at the base of it all, there's just a lot of love for my guys. I love my crew. I love these guys, and ultimately I recognize that I'm the one that got them into this. I'm the one that got to get them out.
Right. And I'm glad that you mentioned, Sting, the flaw of the character that you portray, because I was the whole basis of the question, and it does parallel a real life situation where people make desperate decisions. Of course, we're not going to the moon to face aliens, but as you had mentioned, a business owner or someone who's just striving to get something off the ground does something they're not too keen with, and the results may have drastic consequences, such as the character that you portray.
Expressing future in horror, sci-fi.
Instigated by mankind.
DNA recognition rejected.
Can't look away. I can't look away.
And for our second topic, it is expressing the future in indie horror / sci-fi. Now, of course, we opened our episode with a little overview review of Crossbreed, and we delved into the special effects and the practical effects of the film. So I emphasized that it's about 80-20. 20% of the special effects were totally, oh wow, I have no words. But the other percentage is really nice, and I emphasize that the space station, spaceship, and also the space context of the film looks impressive. So the topic here is, how risky is it to create something like expressing the future in horror and sci-fi, especially when we really need a awesome looking alien creature? And I think no one has ever topped that except for Predator and Alien. No other film has it. And remember, those films weren't big budget at the time, especially Predator. I think Predator was more of an indie film. They had a pretty decent budget. Anyway, so Stacy, what are your thoughts of expressing the future in indie horror / sci-fi?
Honestly, the future in paranormal is, I think it's awesome. This is actually probably one of my favorite ideas, because the future can bring about so much. I mean, just the future in anything when it comes to cinema. We've seen movies like let's say Batman, right? I mean, this is going completely off topic, but let's say Batman and all his gadgets he's working with in technology. Okay, we see what the future can bring there. And then, in paranormal, like Crossbreed here, with Predator, you mentioned Predator, we seeing what the future can bring to us as far as alien species go.
Right.
But even to top that, and honestly, wait a minute, because I'm thinking about this now. I was mentioning our podcast yesterday with Stranger Things, and I mentioned how just those alien beings in Stranger Things is so original.
Right.
But now that you mentioned Predator, I'm like, wait a minute, that's that just like kind of rules out my whole little argument there, because Predator is awesome.
Right.
What alien species can top Predator?
Right. Well,
he's so technologically advanced. It's
right.
ridiculous.
Right. And that, as a filmmaker, you have to be really careful when you offer future. You talk about technology like Batman. You have to introduce stuff like that if your story allows. If it's post-apocalyptic, I think that reduces the risk, because you can go to an empty lot, or you could go to a desert area, or a place that has an abandoned factory, and you could set up a post-apocalyptic world in that scenario. But once you have spaceships or an alien creature, case in point, when they were filming Predator, the Predator that we know, that's not how it looked. The Predator, you could just go on YouTube and you could see the original design of the Predator. They have a clip, and the martial arts action actor Jean-Claude Van Damme is the Predator. And you see him and you will say to yourself, I am so glad they did not go with that design at all. And they completely threw that out the window and they came up with the better design. That's some of the things as a filmmaker. If you're going to go with an alien creature, it has to be badass. And that's one thing I like about Crossbreed. Even though we don't see her because it's so dark, but at least you could tell that it's freaky looking and it's deadly, and it's a woman.
Yes. Yes, I did love that as well. I mean, and just because, I'm all about, like, hey, women antagonists and all that. I'm all for that. And it's not like prejudice or anything like that. It's just, given all these decades of how things have been, and then they're finally seeing a new light. It's that whole aspect right there. So, but, yeah, I definitely agree with you with everything you just said.
Yeah, and with Crossbreed, it's pretty cool. I really gotta say, for those indie filmmakers that take the risk in making a sci-fi film that involves spaceships and aliens and stuff like that, you're going to get a lot of audiences that are not going to like it, and you're going to get audiences that do like it, because there is a crowd for everything. Even if it's a B movie, there are audiences that like B movie films.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I said, the future in cinema is so appealing to me. Especially given the time with all these like remakes and reboots and sequels. It's like, okay, let's head towards the future. What does the future bring us, please? Let's look down into 2050, please. So that's why I love movies that jump far into like the next decade, like 10 decades ahead of us.
Right.
It's like it's giving us a sneak peek, like what's to come.
Right. And 90% of those films that has to do with the future are all bad news. It's either an outbreak or zombies or aliens that is taking over the world. It's very rare, especially for horror and sci-fi, that it's something that is not that case. And it's I would like to see a future type movie with ghosts, but civilization is not being wiped out. That's a different take. Don't make it so gloom.
Yeah, because it's usually like apocalyptic concepts that are far off into the future. So that would be interesting as well.
Right. Have everybody living good, living nice, and all of a sudden you have a ghost story in the future. Hey, we never seen that. We always see ghost stories in an old house or something like that. Why not put a ghost story in a future house where everything's technology and everybody has iPads inside the house? Put a ghost story in something like that. That's different. That's thinking outside the box.
It is. I agree.
Yeah. But Bob, I have to. If you noticed in Crossbreed, Stacy, I think they shot the film in a ship, in a boat ship, not a spaceship. Ship, because the interior looks just like a ship, and I think that was pretty clever, because if you think about it, a spaceship in the inside will have basically the same interior as a real ship.
Yes, it was. It was. Like I said, it definitely was original in some aspects in this film.
And I would the concept here of alien crossbreeding, gene splicing. That was good. I enjoyed that.
But you know what? Just like those hybrids is such an intriguing concept. Even back to what was the movie? What was the movie called? Was it Underground with the werewolves and with the lichens and were they vampires?
Oh yes,
something like
Underworld.
That?
Right.
And then you had that crossbreed right there. You had that hybrid. I think that concept alone is just awesome. Like you could crossbreed or you can hybrid a lot of species like that.
Right.
So that alone, you have this like little portal that's opened up to so many different possibilities.
Right, and I did like that about the story, and I would have to agree with you, Stacy, that the future aspect of that story, of the story for Crossbreed, is well put together. And right now, there's a lot of tales of alien crossbreeding with humans. Is it true or not? I'm not sure. That is such a weird topic for the study of UFOs.
Oh man, it goes on. Vampires and humans, werewolves and humans,
aliens and humans.
Aliens and humans, you know, it can happen. I mean, if vampires and humans can happen, werewolves and humans can happen, aliens and humans can happen.
Exactly. And one thing here, and they have the government covering up everything that is going on. Hey, I like the writing in that aspect. It has all the typical things of a conspiracy. So the writing for Crossbreed, it was well put together.
But a lot of concepts like this, the government is always behind it.
Of course.
Notice that.
Of
the
course.
Government, especially when it comes to paranormal. I mean, come on. Name one film you've seen that's paranormal that did not involve like government manipulation in some way.
Right. Well, we've seen it in Alien, and we see it in Predator. Yeah. It goes hand in hand. Hey, you need a bad guy. Why not put the government as the bad guy? Come on.
Exactly. They are the bad guy. The government is the antagonist. And then they made this creation and just like making that creation pay for their mistakes, you know, pretty much.
But
that's how the story goes.
But one thing for the future as well, you need to have the wardrobe that really conveys the future. And that could be body armor or regular clothes. It has to match the future. I think, in my opinion, the soldiers' outfits did not match the future at all. In no way whatsoever, because I did some research and their uniform, you could get it on Amazon for under $200. I'll say, okay, they bought that, they put it together, and they made their uniform. But talk about bad guys, Stacy. I think in Crossbreed, there was one person, I think his haircut was worse than the government, and that was degenerate. I was like, what is up with this guy's hair?
But to tackle what you said about fashion in the future, one question comes to mind. When we're like right now and today, how do you even know what the fashion is going to be in that point in time, like the movie, in that point in time? You really don't know.
Right.
But I know when it comes to futuristic. One thing, and again, this is going off topic, is just as far as theme and everything, like Marvel with these superhero comics and everything, just their body armor, Batman, for instance, like that's like a look at the future.
Right.
That's a look at the future, right? But when you're coming back to crossbreed and everything, like how do you even know what like the future fashion entails? How do you even know what armor is gonna look like that far ahead?
Right. And the thing is with that, you're so open to creativity. You can come up with your own shit, your own ideas.
Yeah.
But to create soldiers of the future, all you got to look is what is in video games. And then you say to yourself, okay, as a filmmaker, do I have enough budget to create this armor? Or should I CGI these characters? And then that opens up a whole big can of worms right there.
Oh, these video games are way ahead of their time.
Of course. I mean, I don't want to use Halo as an example, but you could tell right there the body armor for those soldiers. Okay, they're badass.
Yeah.
But how much would it cost to make that in CGI or practical for a film, an indie film? See? So that's a budget always comes into play.
Right. And it's all about thinking outside the box. Like, we're not really like for certain what the fashion is at that point in time, but one thing we know for sure is the technological advances, how it could be that far ahead of time. We've seen movies that have shown us that, like, you know, flying cars and everything. So that's one. And like again, you say Predator, I'm like, man, Predator is way ahead of its time. Like, Predator is 20 years ahead of its time.
Hey.
Oh, God.
I think that's the only antagonist alien that could still rock some dreadlocks and still be hit.
What? Just how, like, you talk about body armor and everything. Look at when was the first Predator film released?
And they still using the same outfit.
Right. And even then, wasn't it the 80s, like 87 or something like that, when the first Predator film was released?
Right.
Right. Just look at that outfit then in the 80s. That was like way ahead of its time, because, I mean, armor like that wasn't even, it's like, wait, what?
Right. It makes sense.
Just it's all like, yeah, abilities and everything with that armor. That wasn't even heard of then.
Right. That's how you got to think of. But as I said, that wasn't the original design. You go on YouTube and you type in Jean-Claude Van Damme Predator, and you would see what the original Predator looked like, and you say to yourself, "Oh, what the fuck is this shit? Oh my god, it is so terrible." I don't think it would be as popular as it is right now if that design were to go as the original 100% design. Thank goodness. It looks terrible.
Creature concept design in sci-fi, horror.
And Stacy, the first two topics that we were discussing were we spent a lot of time with the practical effects, special effects, and the last segment we spoke a lot about the creature design and future. But let's dedicate this segment here for the creature design. And once again, I have to emphasize, using a female character as the antagonist for Crossbreed is a good choice, a good move, being that we hardly see a female as the antagonized force, alien creature. I'm trying to remember if they are female paranormal creatures. I need another cup of espresso to really help me think about that. But Stacy, Devanny Pinn, she portrays the Crossbreed. And if you check out her IMDb, she is a huge influence in horror sci-fi. Talk about women in horror. She is iconic in the genre. And I just had to put that out there because, hey, it ties in with using a female as the antagonist. Great move for Crossbreed production team on doing that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I agree with you. She does a great job as the Crossbreed. And I love this whole creature. I really do. And I mean, just even like we mentioned how it's on the cover, and everything kind of steers you from even wanting to see the film. That aside, like when you watch the film and you see the Crossbreed and everything, you're just like, wow. Like she does an awesome job. And this whole creature, just makeup design is awesome. It's really good.
Yes,
it's original in my opinion. It is.
Right. And the tentacles that come out of her is CGI, which is good because her outfit is practical effects and they just touch up the outfit with CGI. That's how it should be done. And it reminded me of Let's Play Dead Girl. Remember Alto with the tentacles in the back?
Oh yes, I will never forget that film, Let's Play Dead Girl. And that whole Alto, we know he's supposed to be Slender Man, but he was he was an original.
Right.
An original vision of Slender Man.
Right. And as soon as I saw the tentacles on the Crossbreed creature's back, it immediately Alto came to mind and how they used those CGI effects on that creature. But it all comes down to creating a good, even if it's a sci-fi film or paranormal film, presenting that creature at the right moment of the film does work a lot in its favor. The Crossbreed would have been bad if they showed the creature from the beginning and you see it doing its thing. We don't want to see a movie like that. Let's build up the tension, have these soldiers come in, show the conflict, and then boom, show the creature and picking them off. They're fighting each other and it's all about survival. I think it was a good move there too.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Again, when they chose to bring the creature to life was an awesome choice.
And you know what would be interesting? Stinkfisher, the actor Stinkfisher, he is the commander of the soldiers. And now, after watching the film for the second time, I said to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if Devanny Pinn was the commander and Stinkfisher was the Crossbreed? We've seen that so many times in slasher films. We could go into Halloween, Friday the 13th, where the bad guy is the guy and the woman is the final girl. We see it in Alien, and of course, without getting to the technicalities of what the alien creature means, but I think that is such a staple right now with sci-fi and horror.
Oh, definitely. And it's funny you mention that. I love the idea of the final girl.
Right.
I do. I'm all for the final girl. And
but doing it, flipping the roles between them two, it would have played out well regardless, because
it would have, because actually, like I said, Crossbreed is, the concept overall is great.
Right.
Even if the role was flipped, like you say, would have been great.
Right. Either way, it would have been great either way. But I'm still liking how the antagonist is the female. What I would have liked to see with the Crossbreed is the creature is so dark, and when you see the creature, it is in low light conditions, you can't really tell if the skin is scaly. And when the creature was transforming, it looked nice, but I wanted to see a little bit more detail, a little bit more slime. And yeah, you could also compare it with Alien. You could hardly see the alien until the really final 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the film, when you could see its face, and all the other shots, it's hidden in shadow. But in this one, I wanted to see more. I wanted to see the girl a little bit more to really appreciate those practical. I think the practical effects was hidden too much with the lighting.
Now that I definitely agree with, because I felt the same way. I felt like, I mean, just that creature alone was in so much darkness that you can barely make it out. Like, even like we talk about the cover here, like when you watch the film itself, you can barely tell that's the creature because of the lighting it's in.
Right.
So I definitely agree with you there. Yes.
And one aspect that when you're creating a creature in practical effects, you have to have the eyes of the actor or actress has to really convey the role of the creature. And in the costume design for the Crossbreed, we could see human eyes, which I found that's kind of interesting, because since it's a crossbreed with human. So that leaves the question, is it really human after all? Because if it would have had black eyes or lizard eyes, I would say,
eyes,
right?
Cat eyes, you know?
Yeah. So that just leaves
not really a plot twist. I keep saying plot twist.
But in that context, I think the crossbreed is human.
Yeah. And actually, as it shows even on the cover, on the cover, the crossbreed even looks human.
Right. You have the nose. Right. You have the nose, the mouth, the eyes, all human features.
That's a human face.
That's a human face. Right.
That's a human face with like some, some oil and glitter to it.
Oil and glitter.
Yeah, that's a human face on the cover.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, which opens the discussion, is the crossbreed really human after all? That's what came to mind. And yeah, you're right. Looking at the poster, it is fully human face right there. So should it have been a different face, a more alien face, let's say big bulging black eyes? That also is there enough budget to make a creature to look like that?
Yeah. You know what? For $3 million, $3.5 million, you're darn right it's enough budget to make a creature look like that. They just spent their money elsewhere.
Right. I get what you're saying. Right. Hey, practical effects is expensive. Most filmmakers, they don't consider that part of the budget when they're creating the film. Hey, if you're gonna make a creature feature or an alien sci-fi film, hey, 25% of that budget, probably even more, should go into practical effects. Hey, I don't give a fuck if the acting sucks. Hey, if that creature
Not
is
even that. Millions of dollars. At first I thought this was $3,500, so I'm thinking like, okay, I understand. No, millions of dollars here. There's no excuse. Millions of dollars. Now, what does the average film cost? Like, does even Marvel spend that much money in movies?
Hey, Marvel spends millions of dollars, over $10 million, easily, with one scene. Come on, they have a huge budget. But $3 million for an indie film, that's a lot of money. Yeah.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. They're like, I mean, they could have, I mean, but hey, we also got to think about it. We keep saying Vivica A. Fox and Daniel Baldwin. We know they are veteran actors, so maybe they require more investment.
Right. Yeah,
So
you're not going to get
it.
Right. And also, the budget has to include distribution, paying for getting it on HBO or getting it on the movie. You mentioned it has a cinematic release. I did not know this. You need a budget to have your movie played in the cinemas. That's why most indie horror films don't make it to cinemas, because it costs money. I did not know that. I just found out over this week. I was like, wow, look at that. Interesting.
I didn't know that either, and that is an interesting fact.
Right. So as reviewers out there who would say, oh, Crossbreed is terrible, it's this and it's that, you gotta think, okay, someone actually took the time to make the film. Hey, we could critique the pew pew all we want, we could critique the creature design all we want, but at the end of the day, hey, someone got money together, put this shit together, and made a film, and it's out. We could offer advices. Hey, like I'm saying, even if the acting sucks, if you have a great creature design that stands out and it's memorable, even in a slasher, people are going to remember your film just for that.
Yeah. Yes. We love you, Vivica A. Fox and Daniel Baldwin, but oh my God, $3.5 million. Where the hell did it go? Oh my God. Woo.
Oh, man.
When I saw the extra zeros, I was like, whoa, that's a 3.5. I thought it was 3,500. I'm like, wait a minute, Chasey, no. That's $3.5 million. Where the heck did it go?
Hey. If I were to say something, I would say the soldiers. Their costumes just needed so much work. Their costumes. Wow. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, when you look at the practical effects, you can tell a lot of investment was made there with the creature, the soldier costumes and everything. A lot of investment was made there, yes.
Yeah. The shining point for this film, the creature design. The not so nice shining point, I would have to say the soldier's uniform. And the topic for this segment is creature design and horror and sci-fi, the pros and the cons. For the case of Crossbreed, I would say the cons would be the soldiers, and the pro, even if the creature was hidden in the light, hey, it's practical effects, and that's what counts. I would choose that any day than watching a creature in CGI.
Crossbreed Roundtable interview. Featuring director, writer Brandon Slagle, actress, producer Devanny Pinn, and actor Stink Fisher.
Question back to Brandon. As an independent filmmaker, Crossbreed has a lot of eye candy, a lot of special effects, of course, and you have big names attached to the project. What were the challenges from an indie perspective and an indie company to pull all this together into one cohesive project?
And this is an answer a lot of people probably say, is there's just never enough money and time. And the thing is, this still applies no matter the budget level of any movie. You could be making Star Wars and you're trying to hit a release date and there's still not enough time.
Yep.
So you really have to do the best you can with what you have. And if you have this idea that everyone loves, but it doesn't fit in this particular project for story reasons or for budgetary reasons or time reasons or whatever, that doesn't mean you discard it. It means you put in a box, save it for later. You have to do the best you can with what you have, given the circumstances, and make the best product, because the audience doesn't care that you didn't have enough money. They don't care you didn't have enough time. So you have to make something that resonates with people, that has a sheen to it and is going to connect with them. Because, like I said, they don't care about your problems as long as they're entertained.
Wow. I would have to say the character you portray, of course, the antagonizing force in Crossbreed. The one thing, when I seen the film for the second time, of course, that's when I absorb everything, is the makeup effects, the practical effects. I am a huge applause for any film that really emphasizes practical effects. Of course, you can't avoid special effects since it's a sci-fi film. But how was that process, getting into all that latex and goo and making your character come to life?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And producing the film on top of it.
Yes. And producing the film. That actually was, man, I hope that made the behind the scenes. So I had done a lot of prosthetic work in the past, obviously, because when you kind of make a home in horror, you expect to have it. So I had a lot of experience doing practical effects, practical stunts, gags, and of course the makeup. I really wanted to go big or go home, because I knew majority I was going to be producing this one, and just doing a little bit of acting in it. So I wanted to do something that was really fun, and I love makeup effects. Obviously, with the genre background, I'm a huge fan of doing anything practical if you can. I like that CGI enhances an experience instead of replaces it. It makes it more organic, and I know that people who enjoy the kind of movies that we do really would appreciate it. So we met very early on regarding bringing the alien to life practically first, and as Brandon mentioned, there's never enough time or money, and that was really a challenge on this one. I have to give a shout out to our makeup effects people, Cindy Cullum and Tessa Philbrick, who really took on the challenge with gusto. Also, shout out to Masters Effects, who helped assist on that with pieces and advice for the alien as well. And it was a long process. I think our longest day in makeup was just under 16 hours for a full body latex and prosthetic. And yes, it was a very, very long time. So I was challenged on that one, not only for just being able to be there and stay there that long, but the headpieces and the latex are very claustrophobic. And it makes it difficult to see and hear. And after you've been in makeup for that long, then to perform a scene that is all stunt and movement related, I really just wanted a cup of coffee and a nap. And you couldn't do it. And to top it off, I really was, it was an ambitious project, and so our resources were a little bit limited. So I really was the sole producer of the film as well. So trying to run the set and troubleshoot problems when I was, half an alien was really probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
If I could interject, I'm just going to say that one of the strangest things I've ever come across is an alien ordering lunch for the entire cast and crew. It was one of the strangest things I've ever seen.
Yeah. And I'm going to interject quickly saying that our stunt coordinator, Jason McNeil, who also plays Degenerate, the character with the Colonel William Guile, Billy Idol haircut,
yes.
he and I trying to talk to her while she was in that makeup, it was like we were talking to someone we had never met, because, like she said, she couldn't hear, she couldn't really see, she could barely move because, heaven forbid we ripped something. It was a learning experience for all of us. And I think it actually ended up sort of contributing to the characterization and the movement of the character as well.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, and props to Brandon as usual, who's brilliant. And he really, like, I had an idea of how I wanted to play the movements and the interactions for the aliens, but actually being in the makeup and how delicate it was, it kind of restricted that. And Brandon, over the course of seeing the applications, really came up with interesting tics and quirks for the alien to have that embraced those instead of restrained it. And it made for a really interesting final product, I think. But man, I can't even tell you how hard it is to try and be taken seriously and give orders to people when you're already half the size of everybody on there and one of the only women, and you're an alien. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Everyone was just laughing at me. No one wanted to do what I was saying. So, but we got through it, and it ended up, I think, really making a great team vibe for the set that we ended up appreciating.
Yeah, what's interesting.
Spot on that.
Yeah, people so far from what I've seen seem to actually dig her characterization quite a bit. And you get used to seeing a movie, so you never know, how people are going to respond. But so far, they dig her. They dig how the character came out, and that specific direction for the character's movement, I think, was something like the character was always gestating and molting. It's a little hazy now, but I think that's ultimately what we came up with in terms of like how she contorted her body and things like that.
Convulsions. Yeah, there was a lot of really interesting direction that Brandon gave, which was, I usually come to a character, especially something that isn't human, which I get to play a lot. I'm very lucky to have that total blank slate to bring something to life. And this one, I really heavily had to rely on the team around me because the makeup was so overwhelming, and because it was difficult to see, and I had to be walked to set and placed in places. So it was very much dependent on the team around me to make that successful, and I was really happy that it was a success.
Oh, and don't forget that it was freezing too.
Yeah.
It was
cold. We and also shout out to Michael McIntyre, who plays the larger version at the end of the alien. Fantastic stunt person who's such a badass as well. And we literally were standing there, pretty much naked, being latex and a prosthetic. And then it was so cold because we shot in upstate New York, in Buffalo, New York. So it was just one adventure challenge after another.
Oh wow, that's quite an experience, and it definitely pays off because the alien itself is a good reveal at the right time in the film.
That's all Brandon there and his choices for reveal. So.
Oh yeah, good, great timing. It reminded me when I seen it. It reminded me of Alien. You don't see the actual alien until the right frame of the movie, and that's when the shit hits the fan, which it does in this film.
And you know what? It's funny you mentioned that because in these budget levels, like, and to kind of build on what Devanny was saying earlier about when everything went from video rental shelves like Blockbuster and Hollywood Video and stuff to primarily video on demand being the major outlet. Unfortunately, that also kind of meant that the budgets got lower and the gap between sizes of productions got bigger too. Like right now, everything is either like $150 million comic book movie and up, or a $5 million and under direct-to-video movie. Whereas in the past, a direct-to-video movie could have a budget up to $15 million or so. And even the $5 million bracket is kind of generous. A lot of them, like a lot of the action movies with, big stars from yesteryear, don't cost more than $1 million anymore. But anyway, I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of salespeople will encourage you to load the movie with reveals from the creatures or what have you from the very beginning. And unfortunately, I think that, for one thing, underestimates the audience and thinks that they're stupid, which a lot of audiences are not, despite what salespeople want to tell you. And it also tarnishes any mood and build that a film will have. Because granted, they want to see, they do that because they want to see how much they can sell the movie for right off the bat without watching the entire 90-minute thing. But it's also sort of at the expense of the quality or storytelling of the movie. So it's kind of a fine line that we have to walk. Doing these smaller movies that don't have gigantic budgets and marketing budgets and PR and things like that. So the fact that we were able to have like little hints of the alien, but still have something else going on, and then do a full reveal later on, I'm glad that we were able to pull that off and still, sell the movie.
For Stink, your character, of course, in every role that you take, there's a learning experience, a learning curve, et cetera, et cetera. With this film, what are some of the highlights that you have learned, and will you be taking the helm someday of directing a film, let's say in science fiction, with all the experience that you learned as an actor?
That's a great question. I walked away from Crossbreed with, let me say this, when you work on a project, everybody, the first day there's, the jitters, everybody's kind of sniffing each other, feeling each other out. The first day you deal with technical problems and, location problems. And then, with a couple days in, you start getting rolling and everything seems to be clicking. But ultimately, it's like, oh, man, we're wrapping in a week. I can't wait to wrap. I can't wait to wrap. Can't wait to get home. And I got to tell you, like, this was one of the first instances in all the years I've been doing this where I really did not want to see this wrap. I was having such a good time. And this film, this set, this experience really embedded in me. And I mean this 100%. This embedded in me that I'm doing the right thing in my life. That this is who I am. This is what I want to do. And
Aww.
I have such a love for creation and for teamwork and for collaboration. Like that Crossbreed brought all that front and center for me, because there's times where, you're on set for 2 days on a movie and, you might have 5 scenes, 6 scenes, but you're not there the whole time. So it's like, you get a little taste and then you go home and what have you. And with Crossbreed, we were all on location. We were all there for, some of us for 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, some a little bit longer. And the familial atmosphere that was created, the mind meld, my God, it was unbelievable. I mean, we were all literally on the same page. There was no griping. There was no, oh, wow, we're working long hours today. I mean, it was like, hey, man, we're getting this done. Let's do it. This is awesome.
Yeah.
We all knew we were making something special, and we were all in. I mean, we all drank the Kool-Aid, and that's up. And that all comes back to Brandon. That all comes back to Brandon and Devanny. I mean, that's what they created. That's the atmosphere, the climate that they created. That's the people that they pulled together to create this vision of theirs. It all comes back to them. I mean, you always hear if you got a problem, you cut off the head of the snake. But you know what? Oftentimes, when you have such an amazing project come to light and come to fruition, you always hear about the stars, you always hear about the cast, or you hear about this amazing person here, amazing person there. But rarely do you hear the praise about the higher ups, the people that actually were calling the shots and pulled the whole team together in the first place. And that's what I walked away with. I walked away with, these guys got it right. They know how to do it. They're doing it the way they see it. And you know what? They're working as hard as everybody else. That's the thing. Like, Devanny was in that makeup and in that latex for hours and hours and hours. She's not exaggerating. I'm telling you something. She had no movement, literally no sight, no sound. She couldn't hear. She could barely speak. She was literally encapsulated, in her costume. And we all knew what was at stake with that. I mean, we felt for her, and we were like, man, we got to get this done. We got to get these shots lined up, and we got to get this right, because this woman is, she's in a prison right now, an ooey gooey latex prison, but she's in a prison. So what I walked away from set with was, I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. I love being an actor. I love being on set. As far as my own director ambitions, yeah, it's there. Of course, we all want to be directors. I have my own projects. I have a screenplay that's in development right now. It's a comedy that I hope to direct. And honestly, like what I walk away with is stay true to your form, push your vision forward, even when you have to collaborate with others. If you really truly feel like your vision is the way to go and the shot needs to be a certain way because that's the way you see it, then you need to work it out with your folks. But it's always done in a respectful manner. It's always done with politeness, and it's always done with the idea that, hey, man, we're all in this together. None of us want to make a bad film. So let's get where we need to be, and let's try it this way. And you know what? If it doesn't work, maybe we'll go another direction. But let's give it a shot. And that's what I walked away with. I walked away with that's how you treat people on set. That's how you treat your cast and crew, and that's how you put together a kick-ass movie.
And to close out our interview, I have a couple of questions. The first one is for Brandon and Devanny. Being an independent filmmaker and having your own company, there's a line that you need to tread carefully in between being an entrepreneur of your own company and as well as creating the content. From your experience so far, what were some of the obstacles, especially with investors or getting funding or distribution, that really blurs this line and getting what you want to push out, but at the same time, you have to push out a product that appeals to the masses or appeals to your distributors or investors?
Oh man, where do you begin? How much longer do we have?
Yeah, no. Here, I'll sum that up really quickly. We quickly adopted a model called reverse engineering, and what that basically is that we would go to the end result first. So we knew that we didn't want to make a product that no one would see. So we would go to the distributors and the sales agents and all the people who were going to be buying a finished product or developing a product that they would put out for sure. And so we would ask them what would sell for them, what they were interested in, what the easiest route for a non-studio production to get out there would be. So then they would tell us genres, they would tell us subgenres, they would tell us elements or cast, and we would take that and we would go a step backwards and we'd say, okay, well, if we have this amount of money, what can we do that would include those elements to guarantee distribution? Once we have that, we would go back and then we would say, well, okay, this is the movie with these elements. What kind of film do we as fans of cinema want to see? And so we would take that and we would shape it. And then we would go back one step further and say, here's realistically the kind of funding that we can obtain or that we can get or go after. How can we make that story happen within these compounds? And from that, Brandon would go and write a story or team up with a screenwriter, and we would develop the project from there. And then we would go and I would then take the script and put all those elements into place, and then we would shoot. And so that's how a lot of people would ask us from day one, because I believe Crossbreed's our 10th feature now. Everyone would always come to me and ask, how do you guys keep making these? How do you guys make it all the way to the end? How is it successful? And honestly, I have no problem sharing. That's exactly how we did it, because when you're an independent filmmaker, there are so many challenges along the way. You need to X out as many obstacles as you can before you even start.
That is good advice.
You have to make something that is going to sell. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. But that doesn't mean that you can't, like Devanny said, put your own spin on it that you still enjoy.
Yes.
You see some companies churn out things only based on sales, and they're sort of there's no
short-lived.
But so if you put your heart into something, whether or not it's your favorite genre, whatever, you can still find something you like about a movie and make something interesting out of it.
And Brandon's great about that. He's super creative. If I give him really strong confines to what a sale is going to be, he will still say, okay, we can make the exact same movie that 70 other people are making this year with bigger budgets and bigger names and whatever else. Well, why would people want to watch ours? And we literally have that question, and we sit on that question, and we don't make the film until we have an answer. It may not be the right answer, but we have a reason every time why you should potentially want to watch our film instead of comparables. And that's, I think, why we've been successful at each level, however small or large, is because we're fans first. And so we crack the system a little bit as far as the business end of it, but we want to make movies that you could enjoy. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. And with the science fiction and horror community, it's such a welcoming community. Films such as Crossbreed and your previous projects are already a staple. Once it's released, it's a staple. And when you go to the conventions, you'll be recognized for the films that you have issued. Final question for Stink. Hearing, actually, your transition from sports, theater, and as an actor, what advices do you give for those who are contemplating themselves? They find themselves in a let's say a 9-to-5 or work that they don't want to be in, but they want to pursue the performing arts.
Well, like you said earlier, what we all have in common is we have vision, we have our passions and our dreams, and we're going after it, and we're getting after it, and we're making it happen. You can't get wet unless you jump off the diving board into the pool. So you can't be a spectator in life. And the way that I look at things, and what I tell anyone that wants to sit down with me and hear me talk for 5 minutes, because I like to talk, I guess, is you have to put it out there, man. You have to put it out there. You cannot be a bystander in life. If you want something, you got to go get it. And that goes for anybody. That could, you could be an accountant, you could be a lawyer, a school teacher, you could be a clerk, doing 9 to 5 at a Target or a Walmart. It doesn't matter. If you have vision, if you have passion, you have to build your nest so that you can eventually leave that nest and venture forth into the arena that you want to get into. So there's nothing wrong with the 9 to 5. There's nothing wrong with having a job. There's nothing wrong with paying the bills. But if you have passion, if you have something that you want to get after, if it's something that it burns inside you when you wake up in the morning and it's there when you're going to bed at night and it never leaves, for the love of life, you have to listen to that call and you have to make it happen. So just take that leap. Take that leap. And I'll tell you, and I think Brandon and Devanny can really add to this by saying you have to have a good support system, especially if you're taking a leap from one profession into the next. So family, friends, you got to make sure that they know who you are as a person, know what makes you tick, and that they're there for you, because it's not all uphill all the time. I mean, it's not all downhill where you're having success left and right. There's a lot of uphill moments. There's a lot of times where, it's dark and it's bleak and you're wondering, like, where's this going? And when am I getting my next paycheck? And how am I going to pay for this? And you have to stay the course. Stay the course. Perseverance, persistence, organization, plan, and heart and passion. That's it. Right there.
Yeah. If I could add, every now and then you hear about success stories where, like, for instance, for Terminator 2, Edward Furlong was cast because the casting directors happened to see him on a playground. You hear about those all the time, but you never hear about the people who, it took them 15 years to be an overnight success.
The thousands and thousands of people, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
because
a
those
lot
don't get headlines. People don't want to read about the struggle and the misery. So like Stink says, you have to really just jump in and be a sponge. You have to absorb, good and bad experiences, both your own and other people's, consistently. Like, I don't care if you're directing the 5th Avengers movie, you still have to be learning.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right on. Absolutely.
And, we have a couple of minutes left. Either Devanny or Brandon. Open platform, please pitch the release, social media platforms for Crossbreed or for yourselves, and as well, Stink, your social media platforms as well.
Okay, so pretty much all of mine, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, are just my name, Brandon Slagle, straight through, no underscore, no nothing. Crossbreeds is Facebook Crossbreed movie, if I believe. Yeah. And we also recently opened a production company Instagram that you can find just by searching Jaguar Motion Pictures LLC, and it has a lot of non-embarrassing photos of Stink Fisher and other cast members on set.
It does. They're great.
Wait, what's that? What pictures?
Yes to what Brandon said, all of that. We'd appreciate it if you go on, especially on Instagram, and follow along. We are posting most of the photos and interactions on there. The Facebook does have announcements to where you can find the film. Right now, we are gearing up for our U.S. release as well as our world premiere. To really recap on what Stink said, everyone really jumped on board on this movie and really got behind it and believes in what it's trying to do, and that we all just literally wanted to have a good time and want you, the viewers, to have a great time watching it too. It's just meant to be fun. And so we're going to do that. So if you go on to our Facebook group, you can find a link for that if you're willing to come in the local area, Southern California. As well, if you are in other parts of the country or the world, we are going to be worldwide release. We'll have more information on each territory as it comes up for you. If you're in the U.S., it comes out February 5th on VOD platforms, and will be followed shortly with DVD and Blu-rays, but you can get it on VOD first. Right now, you are available to pre-order on iTunes. So if you can't wait and you want to be the first person, exclusive pre-order on iTunes. So you can find that also on some of our links. My personal links, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter is at Devanny Pinn.
And that DVD and Blu-ray, those it'll follow about a month later. And I should add that we have about 15 minutes of deleted scenes, and I think a 10-minute gag reel of just some of the jokes that didn't make it into the movie. I cut 40 minutes of jokes.
You cut 40 minutes of jokes? Man, that was my best work.
I know that was 90% of Stink Fisher's role. So if you want to see Stink Fisher in the movie.
Yeah. And I also have to give a special shout out to our primary investor in the film, Donna Kopp, who had unfortunately passed away while we were in post-production. That with her family's blessing, we took an extra few months on the movie to really do the best we could to make it something that she would be proud of, because her sister still tells me that she had the time of her life on set, even though we were all, putting out fires left and right that she didn't know about.
Yeah, special shout out to Miss Donna Cobb. She believed in Brandon and I, what we were doing. She believed in following your dreams, and she, like Stink had said, she had lived a 9-to-5 kind of life and retired and wanted to pursue her dreams and help us reach ours. And she was very proud of this production and what it does. So we are dedicating it to her.
I think it's safe to say I am the only Stink Fisher in the universe. So you can find me as Stink Fisher on Instagram, Stink Fisher on Facebook. Twitter, I am at you, the letter U, Stink. So at you, Stink. And
oh man,
that's yeah, no, it's bad. It's bad.
Wow.
And tagging that next to Daniel Baldwin is always fun. Daniel Baldwin, you stink. Like,
yeah.
Oh wow, that's funny.
He's a good man. He gets it.
Right.
Great. Oh my God.
Thank you
for having us on. You have been awesome.
Well, great. Thank you for your time for this interview opportunity, Brandon, Devanny, and Stink Fisher.
Crossbreed final thoughts.
Okay, Stacy, this is the closing thoughts segment, the final segment for this podcast. Let's start with the positive. We have mentioned it throughout this podcast. You mentioned the budget. I find that it's, even though the budget was high and it should have been allocated into different areas of the film to make it much better than much better than what it is, it's not original, it's not redefining, but it's a great idea, and at the end of the day, it was made, and not many people could say that they did that.
Oh, definitely. Like I said, I love the concept of Crossbreed. Okay, the premise was awesome. The story was awesome. Pretty much, it's where it came down to the acting and kind of like the direction, to where it's like, okay, well, you had this awesome idea. Now the execution was a whole nother story.
Right. And that's always the case in indie films. And for sci-fi, you have a lot of shoes to fill to really convey a good story, because now you got to think about the special effects. Now if a bullet is hitting the wall, and if you're investing special effects on lasers and gun sounds and everything, the least you could do is put bullet holes on the wall to make it look realistic.
And that's a pew pew. I'm sorry. We're in 2020 almost. We don't say pew pew anymore. Okay, this isn't the 70s and the 80s. We don't say pew pew anymore. Okay? There's no excuse with all the technology out there. All right?
Yes. You are so right.
We don't do pew pew anymore.
Oh gosh. Well, with that said, I think Crossbreed is good what it is. It's going to find its audience, of course. And with any other film and the independent horror scene, whether the film is good or bad, audiences will take it. And I will guarantee you, if any of the actors in this film will go to any horror sci-fi convention, they'll get recognized right away. Like, hey, you were that guy from Crossbreed. Hey, you were the guy. That's how this community is. We don't care if the movie was so terrible. It's the fact that the idea is out there.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things about independent films that you love. A lot of independent films, honestly, it's not even about the acting. Okay? That's a whole different topic, but it's not even so much about the acting. It's about the special and practical effects, and then the viewing experience over everything. So
Right.
The acting can be like, okay, it can be horrible, but if everything else aligns, you're just like, oh, that was good. It was still good. It's still 90%.
Right. And with the acting, of course, we have Vivica A. Fox, we have Daniel Baldwin. They're big name actors, but we also have some big names in the indie horror scene. We have Devanny Pinn, for example, Vernon Wells, for example, and also actors that are starting their career who they are in this movie, and despite what people say, if the acting is terrible or not, and the comedy, I would say the comedy was terrible, was horrendous in this film, but the actors who really dedicate their time and their craft into the film, in particular Stink Fisher, he evolved from being a football player to acting, and now he's starting his career in acting. We hear that all the time where people make career changes and they say, I don't want to work in the office anymore, I want to be an actor, and they jump on a film, and the acting may not be good or whatever, but they're just starting out, and you never know, 5 years from now they'll look back and they say, wow, I made that, and you see them later and it's like, wow, this guy is in a big budget film now.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's why it kind of grinds my gears that when you're looking up information for a certain movie and some actors don't want their information to be released. So it's like you got, this character, but the actor is unknown. And it's like, what? Why? I don't know. It's like, okay, me, like I said, if I really want to be an actor, I don't care how low that position was. It's a starting point.
Exactly.
It's a starting point.
Right.
So that's going to get you, it's like that foot in the door.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, and also it's credibility. So when you go on when you go on IMDb and they look up your filmography, but say you look up say you got this filmography, right, on IMDb.
Right.
You say, I acted in such and such movie, but they go to that movie and you're nowhere to be found.
Right.
Really? Yes, showing here you're nowhere to be found. Oh, yeah, I was an anonymous actor. Is that what you're going to say? I was an anonymous actor?
Right.
No.
Yeah. And Stacey, we could even delve into the many actors and actresses that are popular. And without naming names, we know we could go four or five names of actors and actresses right now that they have a whole bunch of films in horror, whole bunch of films coming out in 2019 and spanning years. And he's saying, wow, some of the films that they were in were, oh my gosh, terrible. But other films were good. But you never know when that film is going to be good or bad if you just don't, as you say, put your name out there, put your foot in the door. And people would say, hey, I like you in this movie. Why don't you come aboard and play the role on this movie? All right, cool. And you just expand your resume like that.
Yeah, and I think like it shouldn't matter whether it's a good or bad movie. If you're just starting, if you're a beginner and you're just getting your foot in the door, no opportunity you should pass up. Okay, now when you become more veteran, when you become on that veteran level, then you have every right to be like, okay, I don't like this role. I want this role,
Right.
But when you're a beginner, oh, please, come on. Just take every role you can get to get your name out there, get your, just get your publicity out there.
Right. And I use the example for Stink Fisher because we hear, there's many times that people just want to jump into acting or whatever the case may be that's in a film. And you have Stink Fisher here. He's the lead. He's the lead of the Commandos in this film. He's the lead in this film. And hey, that's a great starting point, I would say. And it's a learning opportunity right there. So when he goes to his next film, whatever it is, sci-fi or horror, people are going to recognize, hey, yeah, I remember him. He was in Crossbreed. So
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing when somebody starts their career like that. And for a movie such as this that has names attached, it's great. I just hope Crossbreed doesn't get such terrible reviews. I think more reviewers out there, they take it for what it is. The acting sucks, which we mentioned. The acting sucks, sure, but you got to see the pros and the cons. You can't just say the acting sucks and that's it. No, be more eloquent and have a understanding of the art form here. Because hey, Stacey, creating a film is difficult. Creating a sci-fi film is even more challenging.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. And even more so than just saying, hey, I remember you in this film. It's also just like having that profile on IMDb, period. Because a lot of people look to IMDb, okay? A lot of people look to IMDb. I can't even give statistics or anything, but I know it's a lot of people. IMDb is the main source of movie updates and everything. So you say you acted in such and such movie, the first place the person's going to go to is IMDb. And when they don't see your name in that movie, or even search up your name and they don't see that movie you stated, it's going to be like, okay, I don't see you here.
Right. And what grinds my gears is not only that, but you have no headshot or no picture. Or if you put a picture, it's a picture, it's a selfie. Come on. You're starting your career here in the performing arts. The least you could do is get a friend to pick up a camera and put a picture. No, don't do that to yourself.
And remember, there are billions of people in the world, okay? Unless you have that, really odd name that's hard to even pronounce, chances are you're not the only person of your name that's out there.
Right.
Okay?
Right. You need a picture.
It's you also got to think about that. Billions of people, and you're one out of billions of people in the world, okay? So... you really got to have that name where it's like, wait, what's the name? That you know, you have the slim chest defining that, or you're just like, oh, okay. But other than that, it's like, man, if you don't have a profile picture up and you type your name in, you can come up with 50 results. And you're just like, okay, which person am I going to try to find?
Right. And looking at IMDb now for the cast credits for Crossbreed, I see one actor that does not have a profile. So if you're listening, please put on a profile picture and some information about yourself.
Yeah, this is credibility. This is kind of like, you know, you're filling out an application for a job and they look at your, employment history. This is that employment history, regardless of what film you were in, regardless of what kind of film you were in, regardless of what your role is. This is credibility right here. IMDb is credibility.
Right. And to cap off this segment, I would say, in my opinion, I would agree with you. The idea, the premise, Crossbreed is good. Execution, not so much good. But that said, not so much bad. So we got to give credit where credit is due. There's some parts in the film that is good. There's some parts that weren't good. But overall, it was a good viewing experience. It's a spaghetti film. I would have a bowl of spaghetti and watch this film. And some wine. Yeah, which I did not, but I would.
And as you mentioned, the good even outweighs the bad. You know, it's that whole 80-20 or 70-30 you mentioned. The good outweighs the bad. Absolutely.
And I think that pretty much sums it up for Crossbreed. Thank you for tuning in to DecayMag Sessions episode 21, where we discuss Crossbreed. Once again, special exclusive interviews with Crossbreed writer-director Brandon Slagle, actress Devanny Pinn, who portrays the Crossbreed, and actor Stink Fisher, who portrays Adam Boss Riker. My name is Ken Artuz, DecayMag founder, and my co-host for this episode was
Stacey Cox, staff correspondent. Be sure to stop by our Patreon page at patreon.com/DecayMag. Your donations will help us bring future episodes. As a patron, you'll receive bonus content as well as free and discounted on upcoming DecayMag merchandise.
Once again, you can find DecayMag on all social media platforms at DecayMag, not DK Magazine or the letter D, the letter K, DecayMag. And of course, you can find DecayMag on all major podcast platforms, including Google Home, which I'm not going to say because my Google Home device in my office will start playing DecayMag podcast. That's how you find us, DecayMag podcast.